It's 30,000 years ago. Someone is cutting through the bone of your leg with a sharpened stone. There is no anesthetic, no antiseptic, not even a word for surgeon. And somehow, you live for 9 more years. For almost all of human history, people went under the knife wide awake. How they survive it is older and stranger than any hospital. Start with the skull. 7,000 years ago, in what's now France, someone cut a hole clean through a living person's head. We call it trepanation, scraping or drilling through bone until you reach the brain. They likely did it to relieve a cracked skull, or blinding headaches, or the fits and visions they believed came from something trapped inside. Open a door in the bone, and maybe it could get out. And here's the detail that should stop you cold. The bone around the hole had grown back. Smooth, sealed, healed. That only happens if the patient lived. These weren't freak accidents. More than 1,500 of these open skulls have been found across the world, and people got good at it. In the earliest Peruvian cases, maybe 4 in 10 survived. By the time of the Inca, it was closer to 9 in 10. Better than some hospitals managed as recently as a century ago. Stone and bronze tools, no pain relief that worked, and most of them stood back up. Then there's the leg. In a cave in Borneo, archaeologists found a young hunter-gatherer whose lower left leg had been removed cleanly, deliberately, 31,000 years ago. Not bitten off by an animal, not crushed in a fall, cut. And the bone had healed over. This person lived another 6 to 9 years on one leg in the Stone Age, with no sign the wound ever went bad. Whoever did this knew where to cut, how to stop the bleeding, and how to keep the wound clean. Tens of thousands of years before the first word of medicine was ever written down. It quietly rewrote what we thought people that far back could do. Your ancestors weren't fumbling in the dark. They were surgeons. So how did they kill the pain? Mostly, they didn't. They tried. Farmers in Stone Age Europe were already growing the opium poppy. Egyptian healers wrote the poppy into their medical scrolls 3,500 years ago. There was mandrake and henbane, plants that genuinely cloud the mind because they carry the same chemicals we'd one day purify into real anesthetics. And there was wine. Always wine. Later, surgeons soaked a sponge in opium and mandrake and held it over your face until you slipped under. In my world, we chewed what the land offered and we hoped, but none of it could be trusted. Too little did nothing. Too much stopped your breathing for good. There's a story of a Chinese physician, Hua Tuo, who is said to have brewed a true surgical anesthetic. Though if the recipe was ever real, it died with him. For everyone else, the truth was simpler and harder. There was no drifting off. You felt the first cut and every cut after it. The anesthetic was speed and 4 strong people holding you down. Which brings us to the worst 2 centuries to ever need a knife. Because by the 1800s, we had cities, medical schools, beautiful, sharp steel, and still nothing for the pain. They even built the operating rooms like theaters, so students could lean over the railings and watch. That's where the word comes from. Under the table sat a fresh box of sawdust to soak up the blood. The surgeon's coat was stiff and dark with the last patients, and he wore it like a badge of experience. And the assistants had one real job: hold you down, because nobody lies still for this. In 1811, the writer Fanny Burney had a breast removed. No anesthesia. Napoleon's own surgeon worked while she lay awake under a single sheet of cloth, feeling every pass of the blade, even the scrape of steel against her breastbone. It took nearly 4 hours. She wrote afterward that the terror of it went beyond anything words could hold. She lived another 29 years and never truly stopped hearing it. The only kindness anyone could offer was speed. In London, Robert Liston could take a leg off in about 25 seconds. Students timed him with their pocket watches. Roughly 1 of his patients in 10 died. Everywhere else, it was closer to 1 in 4. There's a famous story about Liston, almost certainly exaggerated, that one operation killed 3 people. The patient, an assistant whose fingers he accidentally sliced off, and a spectator who dropped dead from fright. It almost certainly never happened, but people told it anyway because it felt true. That was the reputation of surgery. And then, on one ordinary Friday morning, it stopped. October the 16th, 1846. A packed theater in Boston. The room is still called the Ether Dome. Almost no one there expected it to to work. A year earlier, another man had promised a painless operation and failed in front of a jeering crowd. They'd called the whole idea a humbug, so the room was ready to laugh. A dentist named William Morton held a glass inhaler over a young patient, Edward Gilbert Abbott, until he sank out of reach. Then the surgeon, John Collins Warren, cut a tumor from the man's neck, and Abbott didn't move, didn't cry out. When it was done, Warren turned to the silent, disbelieving room and said 6 words. Gentlemen, this is no humbug. Thousands of years of screaming ended in a single afternoon. Surgeons who had spent their whole careers learning to cut fast through screams now had to learn a stranger skill: how to slow down. Within weeks, the news crossed the Atlantic, and even Liston, the fastest knife in London, put a man to sleep and cut, then admitted this quiet Yankee trick beat anything he had ever seen. But the knife was only half of what could kill you. You might survive the operation and die a week later of a fever no one understood. For centuries, pus in a wound was read as a good sign. Laudable pus, they called it. Proof the body was fighting back. It was the opposite. It was the infection winning. And the man who saw the truth first was laughed at. In 1847, Ignaz Semmelweis noticed that when doctors simply washed their hands, mothers stopped dying. For saying so, he was mocked, pushed out of his job, and died in an asylum of an infected wound. The exact thing he had spent his life warning about. It took Joseph Lister 20 years on to make it stick. He began killing the germs with carbolic acid, and the deaths on his wards fell from nearly half to about 1 in 7. Pain gone. Infection finally in retreat. In the span of a single lifetime, the knife stopped being a death sentence. For 300,000 years, the knife meant pain you had to stay awake for. Every operation, in every culture, across all of that time, happened to someone wide awake. And people survived it anyway, with stone blades, healed skulls, and a strip of leather to bite down on. Then, on one Friday morning in Boston, it didn't. On the scale of human history, the screaming stopped about 4 minutes ago.